Hello everyone, I'm Henry Haight. Thank you for coming to my channel and stopping by. For those of you who've never been here before, I'm a multidisciplinary artist. Say that 18 times fast. I work from Los Angeles and London. And today is another episode of Artist Talk. I believe this is episode 4. Today's artist is a connoisseur and a provocateur of the subject of AI art. Now, AI art can be very contentious, and at one point I was a very staunch anti-AI art. And for reasons, like everyone else, there was theft, copyright issue, and stuff like that. Currently, I'm in the midst of dealing with certain copyright things, but that's another video for a different subject and all that. But yada yada yada. Anyhow, I understand the hot topic of this, and the source material where these things come from. Not to mention, massive, large industry virtually kind of taking things and just virtually, it's a wild, wild west of creativity. And to be frank and fair to AI art, at one point photography was not seen as respectable art. Although I do believe that AI art is in its infancy still, it's up to the artist to take the work and use AI as a tool rather than just, okay, here it is. And if I'm honest, I do believe that certain artists want their cake and eat it too, because a lot of artists want to take fair use, but and take other stuff. And to quote the great Picasso, great artists steal, bad artists copy. And is AI art stealing or is it copying? What do we do? How do we go about this? And through this artist talk, I want to talk to Steve about his thought process of how this goes about for him. The reason I chose him is that because he elevates his eye and creativity and takes us, the viewer, to another world. And truth be told, I was following him on Instagram, and I didn't even know the motherfucker was my friend Steve. I was like, wait a minute, hold on here. And I want to be the devil's advocate, to say, okay, let's see what this is about. And to be fair, he has some really strong points, and this talk is going to be done in 2 parts. The first part is going to cover his thought process and stuff like that, as well as different issues and his thoughts on the creativity, how he sees the tool, and then we go from there. The thing that I love about why I chose him is Steve, is that there's me being a Gen Xer myself, that there are all the things that I love, that I grew up on, a healthy diet of gore movies, horror movies, trash cinema, Roger Corman, science fiction, David Cronenberg, body horror, as well as humor. And some of the dudes in his feed and his work are rocking some serious style. He could out Iris Van Herpen a bitch and fucking do Walter Van Beirendonck some really cool work. So this is why I wanted to open up the discussion, because I do believe that art should be a public forum of discussion for to move the process of creation further and be boundaryless. But I do still believe that AI art, to a degree, is just a moldable, malleable piece of clay. It is limitless. Do I think it will replace art, especially since I am a multidisciplinary artist and my thing is screen printing, painting, and photography. No, it will never take the place of seeing a physical thing. However, with Steve's art, as well as just going to see certain work, art is what has you have a physical reaction to it, and that's the magic of art. You have a reaction to the work, and that being said, we'll get on with the talk. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Steve Powell, also known as my friend Bastard AI. I don't hear any
Right,
plays right.
hang on, mate. This is coming from the wrong place. Let me just try and fix. There we go. That button. That should be better if you say something now. That should be better. How's that?
Yeah, no, that's good. But you can hear me pretty well.
Again, now I was coming out of the wrong speaker.
How you been, man? Long time no see.
I've been, life's been kind of interesting this year. Um, but yeah, mostly okay. I've got a really boring job that is incredibly undemanding, which leaves me lots of time for making artwork. So,
Well, I mean, I knew you worked in IT and stuff and kind of graphics and stuff like that. But you know, I haven't seen you since the pandemic because the last time you were in my shop when you came in.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think I might have been in like because I brought you met Vince. Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, uh, and that must have been like 2021 maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't think I've seen you since then. Yeah. So it's been kind of strange because I not the whole kind of journey of this has been kind of weird. I used to do much more. My current job is very kind of boring and sort of management type stuff.
Right.
That all kind of came about because when the pandemic happened, the company I was working for, where I was like a sort of creative technologist, sort of programmer with kind of just to sort of fix everything, make everything amazing type job. Um, I got made redundant from that because the company I was working for specialized in outdoor media. So as soon as everyone was in lockdown, it was like, oh, right, we have no business. So layoffs happened, and that kind of came at a weird time where I think I was quite burned out from it anyway, like a lot of sort of creative burnout. And so I kind of thought, right, I'll try a different direction and I'll try sort of a slightly different, use my skills in a slightly different way, and ended up doing something, trying to get into something more managerial. So that kind of left me in this sort of like weird limbo. And it's like, it's interesting because like even, late 40s, it's like at the time, you're still learning things about yourself. And I think I've sort of gradually over the last couple of years realized I need to be creating things,
Yeah.
and this whole sort of managerial side of stuff is just I just find it so maddening.
Well,
And
I think that the pandemic kind of recalibrated everyone's uh, compass into what was important, or just kind of reassess things.
sure,
Because it's
yeah,
starting from like level one.
yeah,
Um, and have you always been creative or creating art or drawing or?
yeah, pretty much. It's interesting because I've always kind of had this sort of like joining of creativity and computers. That's always been my thing from like the age of sort of 12, 13. I'm like, I was like first adopter in Gen X. I had computers when I was like 11 years old. And then I was always just like alone by myself, just making things and like just whatever kind of my crazy imagination kind of was driving me to. And so, university era, I just focused on the art side. So I did like a year of an illustration course, and then that led me to doing a fine art degree. And then sort of within that, I'd be doing lots of computer stuff at the same time. But like I'll come back to this, like just finding like trying to kind of merge computers and art just didn't really click for me. It's like you couldn't really express anything. It just felt very shallow, very kind of just aesthetics.
Well, how
Um,
old are you?
how old am I?
You're about my age, right?
Yeah, I'm about to turn 51. It's depressing.
Well, I just turned 56,
Oh,
so I'm a little older than you.
yeah.
Yeah, but I
1970.
think back then, graphic design was more uh, enabling like the commercial world rather than the fine art world. You
Absolutely.
know, it was a whole kind of and copy. This is it was put in one particular box until graphic artists kind of were trying to tear it apart and break up the rule book.
Yeah.
Um, because I can see some of the illustrations behind you, which well, one of them I think is from the Japanese illustrator. I can, his name. I have his book, The Massive.
Right. Uh, oh man, I can't think of his name. Karaya.
Ah, hold on, this
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, Karaya, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because this is Japanese, so I just saw The Massive. I'm like, um, yeah, because I think it's now, especially within the last 30 years, graphic design has now merged into visual art,
Yeah.
and it's also kind of, especially with like record covers, album covers, it's kind of
Right.
influenced this new
And yeah,
wave of art.
commercial aspect, it's been, it's kind of taken over. But from, my degree was, purely a kind of within a fine art context. And within that, you're really kind of taught to think about what you're trying to communicate, and you're trying to have something to communicate. And for me, just at the time, just, digital art just wasn't really kind of able to do anything, because the medium itself, I felt, sort of wasn't really, conducive to kind of say anything interesting. So it kind of just fell by the wayside. Um,
And when did you have an aha moment about this? Because I mean, in the short time that I came across, I didn't even know that Bastard was you. I was just like, okay. But the weird thing was that I think when I really got into what you do, because there's you do single studies or double studies, but they're so striking. You make this visual impact, and then the other guy, Voluptus, who was making the rubber suits.
right.
And then I saw your posts, and they're like, people are like, oh, there's drama, there's or whatever. I I liked both of them, but I didn't put two and two together until you kind of go far and beyond with
Mm.
like with the imagination. And what do you have to say about AI as an artistic tool?
I think like approaching it purely from a fine art context, which is what I try to do. Um, I it's really complex, and I'm kind of a little shy with kind of taking it too far at the
You
moment.
shy?
Yeah, I'll do it within my platform and where I've got control. But it's a contentious field, and lots of there's lots of discourse and debate about the ethics of it, which is rumbling on constantly. How ethical is the sourcing of these images, and I appreciate that, and I understand that.
I was a staunch anti, but the weird thing is that the more I think about it, is that it's like looking at a raw piece of clay. AI isn't this machine that's just going to make stuff and take over the world in a sense, but it has to be instructed in a way for you to get your end result.
And it's kind of like, there's a whole, it's like anything. It's like photography, anybody can just pick up a camera and start making pictures. And then you can have like a fine art photographer who has incredible amount of
edits the work.
the image they're making, and from each step of the process. And that to me is what AI is becoming as well. It's, you can play with it, you can create really interesting images and have fun with it. And then there are people who I feel are really starting to make kind of thought-provoking and thoughtful work. And that was what I quickly grabbed onto. And I started making AI images like around about November 2022, which was when there was like a little bit of a blip in people starting to kind of think, oh, this is really becoming quite interesting. And I used a couple of little online apps like phone apps just to kind of play around. It was like, oh, this is kind of interesting, and I was purely approaching it from an erotica point of view. It was like all these crazy ideas in my head and kind of bizarre.
Well, you can see your tastes in a sense. I'm trying to be as as possible. I'm like, oh my, Steve.
Well, I mean, there's like it's still.
I baby.
I grew up in the late 70s, 80s. I was like immersed in gore and creature horror and video nasties. So that just leaves an indelible mark on your soul.
Well, the slug ones always got me because I remember Forbidden Planet in that notorious scene with the woman and the maggot.
Right.
Do you remember that, Bill?
I don't know if I've seen Forbidden Planet. It's black and white, isn't it? I think.
No, Forbidden Planet is a movie that James Cameron was actually on the art team. Okay. And the whole thing is that all these it's a remake of it, but there's a scene where a woman has a fear of insects and maggots, and virtually she gets raped by a maggot, and she orgasms to death.
We are not condoning sexual violence.
I clap. No, demonetize me or whatever.
So yeah, and I was kind of like, the big moment was then sort of December 22, and I was just getting ready to start this new job, and I had some surgery, and then Midjourney kind of popped onto the scene, and they just moved into version 4 of their model, and I was like following a couple of guys, gay guys who were making images. And I'd looked at Midjourney, but I couldn't work out how to it's not just like an app, so I couldn't work out how to. And someone told me, oh, like, do this. It's all on Discord. So I kind of got in, started making stuff, and it was just straight away, oh, okay, this is making the sort of things that I want to, this is the quality I wanted. And I was just away. So, and I think literally by the end of the first month, I think things had really sort of like clicked into place of, all right, this isn't just making, little kind of crazy fantasy images. There's something here. There's something kind of very unique about the way this creates images and how it basically.
Well, your aesthetic is especially the recent ones. The ones I really loved are the glass, the rubber men, butchers, the factory workers. But they all kind of have, and virtually the gentlemen run different shapes and sizes, but they're all quite beefy. There's no twunks, but they're over a particular age, and virtually where I think the word sex appeal rather than like the Instagram thought kind of like if you push the imagination to actually the viewer to go further in their mind rather than here it all is.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I quite like the contrast of taking someone who's kind of like quite an everyday looking guy, probably in the beefy side, and just putting him in some crazy weird outfit, and that just kind of tickles something in my head. So, and I sort of, but I'll try and sort of veer around and do more thoughtful, serious things, and just it's like it's a sketchbook for me on one hand, and it's a kind of sandbox for me as well at the same time. And I just don't filter. Well, I do occasionally filter myself, but I rarely kind of you know what's the word? I rarely filter myself too much. It's just this is what I'm. This is where my brain is today, and this is what I'm kind of. It's bringing me joy to kind of produce. And
So,
that
could you walk me through a process like when you're going to come up with a series? I think you do like anywhere from 3 to like 6 or 7 um, posts in a series. But how do you go about framing
yeah.
a series or an
Uh,
idea?
I mean, it's completely eclectic, and that's really what won me over because, and I think kind of with regards to like taking things from a fine art context, I was always very, it's like, I want to make this, I want to make this. It's like, I don't have the skills to kind of make a little diorama and photograph it and then make a sculpture and then do this. Whereas with Midjourney, it's like, okay, my imagination has no kind of reins on it. If I want to make something that looks like this, I can do. So sometimes it will be a particular technique or art style technique or a particular artist that I see an aesthetic that I really like, and I'll start just sketching and doodling with it. Really, I mean that's broadly the entry point. I'll just enter a prompt. I'll start kind of just playing with kind of ideas and concepts, and then it becomes a really iterative feedback process that I'll see the way that Midjourney is kind of outputting things, and that generally tends to kind of then suggest ways forward for me. So it's
Right.
kind of sort of painterly sculptural process. For me, in my head, it's very kind of the randomness of the outputs as well really sort of feeds into this. So, all of a sudden something might kind of jump off in a slightly strange direction, and it will kind of suggest something to me. So recently I was kind of, just playing with some sort of painterly stuff and doing guys wearing kind of weird head cages that were kind of slightly sort of like Cenobite stuff. And it just kind of something clicked, and it was like, oh, that's kind of very experimental collage kind of going on, and this artist popped into my head who I'd barely thought about for a couple of decades, who's like a British, I think he's British, pop artist from the 60s, RB Kitai, who's very sort of, he's contemporaneous with like Hockney and
What's his name again?
RB Kitai, Kitha. And it was like, oh, that's kind of really like his stuff. So I'll then pursue that in that direction and start to kind of pull out the parts that I like. Other times it may be kind of, I have a really fixed, rarely I'll have a really fixed idea of something I want to try and create. And then it becomes something of a kind of technical challenge to sort of, right, can I push the model to do what I want to do?
Is that where like the use of like negative words or the whole thing? You have your keywords and then you have your negative words, but you kind of have to have this amalgamation to
yeah,
to figure out. I do see a lot of influence of less of Tom of Finland, so to speak, more Alan Jones. Or
I don't know Alan Jones.
Alan Jones. You've probably seen his. There's a huge sculpture in the Chelsea Hospital, but he used a lot of women in latex in the 60s and 70s. Lots of neon kind of things, bondage stuff. But he made a chair where it was a woman virtually, strapped, and virtually the leather boots, the pirouette ballet boots, were the back end. You see? Are you looking at this work?
Yeah. Oh, I recognize a couple of bits here. That's great.
Yeah.
Because I really do. I mean, it's brought me kind of closer to a lot of aesthetics that I maybe enjoyed in the past, but kind of moved on from. So I'm kind of, I really appreciate a kind of 60s pop art aesthetic quite a lot. I love that sort of cut out collage approach to things and very solid block work. So I mean, I've always been a huge fan of Hockney. So I try not to kind of directly refer to kind of to his work, but there'll always be little touches here and there.
You also have a choice of color palette, or do you?
Can influence it quite strongly. Yeah, you can. So there's all sorts of things you can do with Midjourney out of the box. So you can add an image source which will be directly used as the sort of starting point for an output, or you can use an image reference which will then effectively pick out sort of shapes and colors and form, and will influence how the input is made. They work in very different ways. So in terms of the actual text prompt, that generally tends to get quite fixed quite quickly. And for me, it's like when I get into the flow of creating an image or creating a set of images, the text just sort of disappears, and it just becomes this interface directly with me and the computer, where I'm sort of just going in and tweaking something or pushing it in a slightly different direction. And that's the kind of the strength of Midjourney anyways. And it's like there are certainly other image creation processes, like sort of if you're going sort of directly to stable diffusion. And it's like I've used Stable Diffusion as well, and it's also an incredible tool, but it's very much kind of geared up to a sort of pipeline of doing things. So when you want to kind of radically rework something, you would have to kind of go in and add a sort of new node or add a new plugin or kind of change things, set things up exactly right. And then when you've got it done, it can just churn out images, and it's great. But for me, from a fine art perspective, Midjourney just allows you to just instantly change your direction on something straight away.
Okay, that was the first half of the talk. Again, thank you for coming, and don't make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Help the algorithm out. The algorithm out. Jesus, what is that? Also, to the 80, 90 plus subscribers, wow, thank you, because I did this on a brain fart trying to see, and in the last month it's really taken off, and I really appreciate that. So let me know what your thoughts, and thanks to everyone who left a comment and gave him feedback, and there's more to come. And most of all, thank you to Steve, and I'll see you in the next one. Meet my co-host, the Yeti Spaghetti. He's a bit shy. Who's the sparkle? Say bye-bye.